So I will now introduce you to Florian. Florian is a brand ambassador at Louis Latour in Beaune. Good afternoon, Florian.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Sporting a very nice lockdown haircut there, I think, Florian. You've done that one yourself.
Yeah. I'm fancier usually, but not today.
So this afternoon, Florian, we're going to be talking about some Pinot Noir, but not Pinot Noir from the Côte d'Or, as you might expect with a Burgundy company, but with Pinot Noir that's slightly further afield. So perhaps we'll start with a little bit of background to Louis Latour. If you'd like to just fill us in on the past 200 years, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so we are a family company in Beaune, Burgundy. We've been founded more than 220 years ago, as Kate just said. So founded just after the revolution. The family has been owning wine in the village of Allos-Corton, right in the middle of the 18th century. But the company was really founded in 1797. So it's still 100% family owned. There is 70 shareholders, and our boss is Louis Latour, who is the 11th generation of the founding family. So we are lucky to have an extensive domain in Burgundy of 48 hectares in the Côte d'Or, and we also own our own cooperage, which used to be the original job of the Latour family. And so, yeah, we have along the way developed some new vineyards outside of Burgundy, starting with Ardèche back in the beginning of the 80s, end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s. We carried on with the Var, so it's at the north of Provence. So it's half an hour from Saint-Tropez, and over there we have more than 100 hectares of vineyards, which is called Domaine de Valmoisine. So there is one of the two wines we are testing today that is part of it. And then more recently, we've decided to plant Pinot Noir in south of Burgundy, 20 minutes north of Lyon, in what is usually an area dedicated to Beaujolais appellation. And so we are going to talk today about those two last wines I mentioned, the Pinot Noir Bellevue, which is a name for the tête de cuvée of the Domaine de Valmoisine, first vintage 2017, and then the Pierres Dorees 2018.
So we're going to take these two wines and hopefully everybody has them to hand, open. They've got two glasses and hopefully have been maybe in the fridge for the last 30 minutes or so, just to bring them down in temperature, particularly if you're based in the UK. We're having a very warm day today. And so we'll talk a little bit about, first of all, the Pierres Dorees, although so we're not taking it chronologically. We'll take it sort of stylistically first. So Pierres Dorees, as you said, sort of really to the south of Beaujolais. So what led us to this area? What were the things that you were looking for here?
So that's the story of innovation at Maison Latour when it comes to like expanding our borders to new vineyards is always about finding quality source for our Pinot Noir and Chardonnay range. So we are a specialist of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Our origin are in Burgundy. And so when we decide on something we want to do outside of Burgundy, it's on those two grape varieties. That's a first thing to say. And Maison Louis Latour is always looking for having a large selection, a large choice of quality wine, and sometimes because the price are going up, especially on the entry-level Burgundy, those last decades, I would say, and those last years especially, we think it's good to think ahead of time and be a bit visionary on what are we going to drink next in order to keep like to carry on having affordable options in our price range. And that's what we did in Ardèche with the Ardèche Chardonnay. Back in the days, the Bourgogne Chardonnay was fluctuating in price, and the quality, you know, was not linked with the price every year, because the scarcity of the product makes it more expensive, even in vintage that would not be seen as great vintage, for example. And so we decided to go out of Burgundy for that exact reason, to have quality vineyards that makes us able to produce great wine that will be stable in price on a longer time period than what we know in Burgundy, where the price can fluctuate a lot because of the scarcity of the wine. So that's the story behind Ardèche, Valmoissine, but also the Pierres Dorees. So for a long time, beginning in 2010, we started to explore the South Beaujolais region. And you have to know that this specific area is not at all made of, the subsoil is not made of granite. It's clay and limestone the exact same way that it is in Burgundy. So it's not a great area for Gamay. It's producing Beaujolais wine, but not, I would say, not the best ones, because Gamay is like considered typical on granite. So when it grows on clay and limestone soil, it could be a little bit easy and too easy. So we decided to explore the region, and we find a very nice region with coteaux, so hillside, nice exposition, nice altitude, and because of the terroir, we believed that would be a great spot for Pinot Noir. That was impossible at the time to plant Pinot Noir over there, but the regulation changed when the Coteaux Bourguignon regulation was passed. And so we were able, because we were having an extensive domain down there, to plant some Pinot Noir. So we had a tight spot to plant Pinot Noir in this area. And so that's what we did between 2011 and 2013. 2014. So we planted 23 hectares of Pinot Noir over there, and the aim was to have lighter density than in Burgundy, but same altitude. It's a little bit hotter down. We are a little bit down south over there, and the aim was to produce a really quality domain entry-level wine for Pinot Noir. So we didn't have all the Bourgogne Pinot Noir we are producing is grapes and wines that we are buying, and we wanted to have an entry-level wines that we are in like full management, from the vineyards to the vinification and the selling. And so we decided on replanting 20 hectares of Pinot Noir at the south of the Pierres Dorees area.
I understand also that there might have been some older vines available in the area, that perhaps the paperwork had been a little muddled over time, and it had been down as Gamay, but it then found to be Pinot Noir. So does that give you a little access to some older vines as well?
Yeah, it's a good question. We replant most of it, but one of the vineyard, I can show you a picture of it, so you can see it there, was a very old plot of Pinot Noir that has been planted there, but not very well declared, I would say. and it's called the Crazy Stone Clos. So it's a very nice name, and it's called that way because it's full of fossils. So you just have to you just pick a rock on the soil, you turn it, there will be fossil on it, no question. So that's why the name of the place was Pierres Dorees. It's because it have like a specific type of limestone, which is a very yellow limestone that come from a specific type of shell that was it used to be a sea, and those specific shell had the minerals that is giving this tint to the limestone over there. And the area is named like that because all the buildings are built with this specific stone. So it's called the golden stone, les Pierres Dorees, and that's the reason why. So to answer your question, to come back on the young and old vines question, we have an hectare and a half that have been planted 50 years ago. Okay, but the rest of the vineyard is very young. It's 5 to 7 years old vineyards. And as of today, I said we wanted to have a domain wine. There is nothing simple in Burgundy. We wanted to have a domain wines, but we also wanted the local people to be involved in the project. And when we want to do that, we always suggest that someone else is planting the grapes variety we like and doing the yield we want, and we buy the grapes. So today we have 20 hectares in production, full domain Louis Latour, and there is 5 hectares which are managed by a grower partner, and we buy their harvest. So that's the way we do things. There is one big weakness of that is we cannot put domain on the label because we buy a part of the grapes. But when you think about the long run, that's something we wanted to do because we want to not be on ourselves and produce this wine by ourselves, but also to try to have this region to grow some Pinot Noir, and so involve some other grower to do it with us.
Okay, great. There's a couple of questions coming through whilst you've been talking, Florian. One of them is, when were the Coteaux Bourguignon rules introduced to allow Pinot Noir to be planted?
It was 2011. We had long discussion in 2009, 2010. Then in 2011, the regulation passed for the field. So in vineyard, in the vineyard, there is some adaptation from 2011. And then in 2013, the first wine, like Coteaux Bourguignon wines, were starting to be released. We've did some choice in the vineyard. I can show you some plot that the organization of the plot that we have. So it's 2 main island of vineyards, and what we've tried to do is to plant some on the Burgundy regulation, so exactly the same way we would have planted in Burgundy, and some other we decided to adapt and to plant it directly on the Coteaux Bourguignon book of rules, I would say. Yeah. So we have those 20 hectares in production, but not all of them go every year in the Pierres Dorees cuvée that is released. But that's our own, I would say, kitchen, and that's really complex because that was discussion between Burgundy and Beaujolais. So in addition of all the, I would say, regular regulation, we had those conversations between 2 different regions, and it makes things sometimes even more complex. So that was a challenge, and we are quite proud of what we've done because we were the first one, and now we are not the only one. So that just means there is attraction and people are interested in the project. So it's good news for us. So
perhaps people have tasted the wine already or would like to taste it now. Whilst we're talking, do you want to talk a little bit about the winemaking, sort of how Louis Latour makes its Pinot Noirs sort of generally, or if there's a particular approach to the wine from this particular vineyard?
Well, yeah, it's so first of all, the planting is not the same. So we have 11,000 plants per hectare in Burgundy. I would say no in Burgundy, but in Côte d'Or. Okay, in Pierres Dorees it's only 6,000. So it's 2 times less dense, and we have 1.8 meters between rows and 90 centimeters between plants. That allow us to go with a fruit tractor instead of a real like Burgundy vineyards tractor. So it saves a lot of cost in the vineyard management. And it's also save a lot of time when you want to do good pruning. We love at Maison Louis Latour, like we say, 90% of the work is done in the vineyard. So we love to work a lot in the vineyard. So to deliver, to do everything we can to reach the maturity we want, etc., etc. If we want to do that correctly, far away from our base, meaning in Beaujolais, in South Beaujolais, we have to make it easier in some way. And in that case, we decided to it's part of a overall decision. But the fact that we have only 6,000 plants per hectare allow us to be to do the same work as we do in Burgundy, but the guy who is doing it takes him 2 times less, because when you do the ébourgeonnage, so when you remove some of the shoots, if you do it on 2 plants, it's going to take you 2 times more time than if you do it on 1 plant. So that's the reason why we did that. It's the first harvest have been manually harvest, but we machine harvest. That was also a decision made to keep it affordable. That's a decision we've made in Ardèche and also in Valmoisine, and that's a decision we've decided to apply as well in the Pierres Dorees. Then the grapes are brought to bone with temperature control trucks, and then the vinification is made in bone. So there is no need for destemming, because it's machine harvest. So the destemming is already well done in the vineyard. What we do is when we receive the grapes, we sort them, okay? And then we have created a specific micro cuverie in our regular cuverie to deal specially with this wine. Because there is a volume that is significant. It's not a huge volume, but it's significant. And we want it to be as precise as we can be with the vinification of this wine. And so if you come to Beaune, I see Peter on my screen, he came to Beaune and it was not in place. If he come back, I will show him this new part of the cuverie, which is specifically dedicated to the Pinot Noir Pierres Dorees. So it shows you how important this wine is for us. We've made some specific investment, I would say, in the hardware at the cuverie for the crafting of this wine.
So sorry, Florian, just to remind us, there's how many hectares that we're working with in the Pierres Dorees?
So 20 our own vineyard and 5 vineyards we have contract with. So it's 25 in total. And we had a quite nice yield in 2018, which is the vintage you're testing right now. We used to be at 30, 35 because, young vineyard and so on. And in 2018, we were at the goal, and the goal is 40, 45 hectoliters per hectare.
Great. And so this is actually the 4th release, the 4th commercial vintage of this
wine. The first one was 2015. Mm-hmm. First vintage to be released was 15. And then we've released the 16, 17, same volume. And then there is a step up in terms of volume because there is a part of the vineyard that is entering in production in 2018. So the first harvest was 1,000 cases. And 2018 is 7,000.
Okay. And Peter's asking that if Beaujolais becomes part of Greater Burgundy, as Burgundy as a whole, as I know Louis Fabrice has talked about a number of times, will this alter the production of Pierres Dorees at all, or will it continue as it already is?
So that's an excellent question. We've put everything in place in order to be able to carry on whatever is happening. So that's the reason why I said we have our own kitchen, and we decided to replant some of the vineyards on a specific book rule and the other on another one. That's because if those vineyards can be turned into Bourgogne, we will do it. We will be able to do it, but it won't change a thing, because for us, Coteaux Bourguignon is just a legal framework. What we want to do here is to create a caution, you know, almost like you know, it's our Pinot Noir from the Pierres Dorees. It's almost, we see it almost like a brand. It's Coteaux Bourguignon today. It can be Bourgogne tomorrow, or maybe IGP or Vin de France. That won't change the way we are making it and the way we are selling it. That's the aim. That's the goal.
And there's a nice question from David about the label of the Pierres Dorees, which in a very un-Burgundian way contains lots of information on the front about density and altitude and so on and so forth. What was the decision to make that differentiation from the rest?
So first thing, Louis Fabrice wanted a label that fit the family but show that we are doing stuff. Meaning, we didn't want to have, you know, the same good old label. You know that at Maison Louis Latour we don't change our label, so we believe in consistency a lot. But when it comes to this wine, we believe it's a modern wine in the approach, and we wanted it to translate on the label. So that's the first thing, for the how different it is from the rest of the range. And for the data that we put at the bottom, first, it's interesting because it's quite specific. And so we believe for an amateur, it's interesting to have those information, because it's help you, you know, to understand the wine and the philosophy behind it. And the other stuff was, we cannot put domain on the wine on the label, because, as I said, we buy some of the grapes to partner next door, and we wanted to show that we are doing things from the vineyards. We didn't want people to think that, you know, we are buying some you know, bulk wine and putting our brand on it. So we also did that to show and to prove that there is a vineyard behind the wine, and we are the one running it. So there is those two factors. First, we wanted a more modern label, and second, a more informative label in those two sense. Informative for the information it contains, and informative that we are the one running this vineyard.
Cool, thank you. And so I'm assuming now everyone has tasted the wine. I did send out a tech sheet when I confirmed the session yesterday, so maybe some people have had a look at that. Do you want to run over just quickly any details of the wine, or shall we move on to talk about Valmaison in the Var?
No, that could be. I'm not tasting the wine with you. I don't have the wine with me, but I would be interesting to have some comments from the audience. I tried yesterday the 17, and I have to tell you, it's always this wine impressed me a lot on the way that the 17, for example, blind, I would have said a south village of the Côte d'Or, and for me it's quite unusual, because that's a really serious wine. There is this, you know, it's lively. It's I don't like the word fresh, but you know, you have those fresh fruit and immediate fruit, okay. But you have on the nose, especially, I think you have this nice, you know, overall Burgundy complexity with some more earthy notes, and I really love this wine paired with food, and you can pair it with basically like anything. So that's a wine I'm always eager to have some comments from, like, people who are newly discovering it. because sometimes I'm surprised by the reaction. So if there is someone who wants to share his impression, good or bad, I would be happy.
There's a few comments coming through, Florian. Liz Sager should be our proofreader, because she has noticed that the tech sheet refers to some barrel aging, but the label on the bottle says that it's only inox.
Yeah. That's because on the 2 first year we did, it was not half, but you had manual and machine harvest, and you had oak aging and stainless steel aging. So for the 2 first vintage, that was, the technical sheet is right, okay? But for 17 and 18, I have to update it. Thank you.
And so Peter comments, because he, as you rightly say, he tasted one of the earlier vintages. He feels that the wine has moved on a lot, and perhaps that's to do with the extra vine age. A couple of years has given some extra depth, I think.
We also learn as we walk. That's something that no one ever did before. I mean, to plant such a large acreage of Pinot Noir on this area. And also, you know, to transport the grapes is not something we, for the other vineyard, we are vinifying on the spot, and then we are bringing back the wines. In that case, we bring back the grapes. So that's true that for the 2 first harvest, we didn't have this specific site on the cuvée, as I said. And we are now sorting the grapes out of machine that have already destemmed the grapes. So as I said, we learn as we walk. And I'm quite agree with Peter. I was in love with the 15. Then the 16 was kind of our the in between the very first year where you try a lot of things, and 2017, which is supposed to be, you know, the final wine. And so in 18, I think we are now at what you can expect for 19, 20, and the year to come. We are at this level of quality now.
Great. There is a discussion as to why you don't like the word fresh in your tasting, because the fact is that it is fresh.
Yeah, you know, sometimes I use fresh, but in my mind I have this almost, you know, mental aspect of the fresh. You know, I think it's I'm promoting gum and not wine. That's just the reason why.
Fair. Let's move on to so the new cuvée from the Domaine de Valmaison down in my neck of the woods in Navarre. So let's talk about a little about that site.
Okay, so sorry, I cut you. So we decided we had a great success with the Ardèche, and the Ardèche was the end of the 70s, and it was only with Chardonnay. The terroir over there is a very poor clay and limestone terroir, so we decided that is great for Chardonnay, but not that well for Pinot Noir. And so in the 80s, at the end of the 80s, we decided to find another spot, but for Pinot Noir, okay, to grow our red grapes variety. And that was harder than the Ardèche. And finally, we found this location, which is quite peculiar because we can grow our Pinot Noir here, but around this area, it wouldn't be possible. So it's a small spot, and we can grow our Pinot Noir here because it's very high in altitude. So we got the fresh nights. The problem with the Pinot Noir, you all know that it's losing all its nice characteristics when it's grown on a too hot climate. And the south of France could be very hot, especially at the end of the season during summer. So there is this, you know, monk's place that used to be there, which is called Valmoisine. So that's the explanation of the name. It used to be a collégiale where monks used to live. And it's at 50 meters of altitude. So it's very, very high. In the Pierres Dorees, we are not above 300 meters, for example. So there is a 200 meters difference between the Pierres Dorees and Valmoisine. And we, over there, we have more acreage on our own than in the Ardèche. We own 80 hectares of vineyards in this area. And there is 40 hectares that we have in contract. So that we don't own, but we decide on everything and we buy all of the grapes. And so for a long time, we had this idea to have this, you know, we have the Ardèche and we have the Grand Ardèche. One is stainless steel, the other one is aged in oak and with a parcellar selection. And we always had this idea in the back of our mind that one day we will have a Grand Var, a tête de cuvée, a higher cuvée for the domaine de Valmoisine. And we scratched our head for a long, long time. And what we decided to do is also maybe to have a different stylistic approach. In the Ardèche, it's a vinification approach that is different. One is aged in stainless steel, the other one is aged in oak. For the Valmoisine, we made some trials, and even if some production made at the very, very beginning was great, made in barrel, it was hard to scale up. So it was impossible, you know, to have 1,000 barrels down in Valmoisine, and the result was not at the level we were expected. And so we have made a lot of different tests and learn, and we end up with that. So we have selected 3 different parcel, 3 plots, which is super small compared to the how wide is the domain in the Var. So 3 parcel around Moissac Bellevue. So Moissac Bellevue, I will show you. It's a beautiful place. We have our part of the domain which is around Moissac Bellevue, and it's a very nice village with a point of view. So I show you this. I hope it will work because it's a video. Tick, tick, tick. Oh, can I put play here? Cannot find the play. Up here. So that's the village. So as you can see, it's very hilly. You have those on the side. You have very steepy vineyards, and all of the vineyards we've selected are on those hills. So you have a great draining, great exposition. The ripeness is very. I mean, the exposure is great, and what we've done is we changed the way we manage the vineyard. Most of the work is done by machine in the Var, but for this wine, most of it is done by hand. So we do all of the pruning, all of the ébourgeonnage, so remove the shoots, all by hand, and we also harvest by hand. So those are harvested by hand. Then we bring them back to the cuverie, to the cellar, and they are destemmed and sorted, okay, on the spot. It's very, very, very seldom that an IGP, okay, because this is an IGP, is sorted. This one is sorted. And so that's something like very specific that allows us to keep only the best grapes. And so we have a wine that goes a little bit longer on the alcoholic fermentation in order to extract a little bit more the tannins. And we can do that because our potential of alcohol is a little bit higher because of all of what we are doing in the vineyards. So it's a different approach than what we've done in the Ardèche, but the base in the vineyard is the same. Parcellar selection, test from the vineyards to the wine. Then when we have decided on the plot, we manage the plot on a specific way. And so we did that for 2 years, and first vintage of Bellevue is the one you are testing right now. First vintage of Bellevue is 2017, and we have produced 17,000 bottles, not cases, bottles.
And just on the site, this site down in the Var, you were saying in the Pierres Dorees that we've planted obviously in a less dense way. Is that the same in the Var, or does the Var planting and the vineyards, do they reflect more the Burgundian style?
No, it's even so in the Var and in the Ardèche, it's even lower than the Pierres Dorees. Pierres Dorees is in between. In the Var, it's 4,500 or 4,300 plants per hectare. Okay, and it's 2.2 meters between rows and 1 meters between plants. And the yield is lower than in Burgundy. The yield is at 35, 36 hectoliters on this first year. So it's even lower than Burgundy. It's, to be honest, that's the yield of a Grand Cru.
Sure. And just remind me of the first grapes that came out for a Valmaison when we first launched Valmaison here.
Well, first the project is from '89, and first vintage was beginning of the '90s. We have some '89, but that was very, very small.
So it's taken us almost 30 years to bring out this project, or at least
it was harder. The VAR project was harder to launch, and the success was harder to get than in Ardèche. I would say that Ardèche was an instant success. VAR, we had to work a lot. The site was older, so we had to invest more on the site. It took time. That was heavy investment, and we have a big vineyard over there, so it's every year it's a challenge, but you know, we love challenge at Maison Latour, so that's part of our DNA. The pruning is also, I forget when you had a question on the density of the vines. The pruning is also different. For the Valmoisine domain, we have a guyot pruning, so simple guyot, okay? For the Bellevue, we do a kind of double guyot. So we put 2 baguettes instead of 1. So there is a better repartition of the grapes and a better circulation of the sap in the plant. Okay, so that allows us to reduce the yield, but to have an homogeneous ripeness.
That sounds like we need to discuss that one in the vineyard more clearly, so that we all can understand it. So as soon as this lockdown is over, we're all off down to the Var to go and see what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, let me show you just here.
While you're trying to do that, there's a question come in about sustainability in the vineyards. Maybe we can apply that question to both the Pierres Dorees and to Valmaison.
So in both vineyards, we are now HVE. So from this year on, we are haute valeur environnementale. So for 20 years, we were doing sustainable farming with an independent company checking on it. But, you know, that was not a trend. We just did that because in a family where you have to pass along the vineyards to your grandchildren, and you do that for 10 generations, you kind of know that you have to take care of what you have. So it's not greenwashing. It's just something we've done for almost ever, but we kind of validate that thing because today labels are more and more important. So people just don't believe you anymore. And so we decided to have this label just to be able to say, we have the label. So we are sustainable, and now we have the label.
Right. It's always good to be able to put a pin on it. So there's a couple of comments coming in. People seem to be enjoying both the wines, and if you haven't already, everybody, if you just would like to taste them side by side, I'm sure Florian will have some comments. But
yeah,
Florian, if you're reading these, but Maggie actually comments that the Bellevue reminds her of an Alsace Pinot Noir with its sort of tartness and cranberry style fruit. She finds it lighter than the Pierres Dorees rather than heavier. So anyway, the 2 wines side by side.
So that's interesting comment about about the acidity of the wine, I think, because sometimes you can also be. The thing is, we are testing two different vintage. That would have been great to test the same vintage. When I say heavier, it's like more extracted when compared to the Valmoisine. So we had this style of Valmoisine, and we wanted it to be close to our wine in Burgundy. And we end up sometimes to have this, you know, black currant, but shy. And we had people telling us, come on, you are in south of France, you have to adapt a little bit more. There is more sun there. We like extraction. And so we decided to release this product with a style which is a bit more extracted than the Valmoisine. Doesn't mean it's more or less extracted than the Pierres Dorees. And so that might make us evolve in the style of the overall Domaine de Valmoisine. But if you compare those two wines, I mean, Pierres Dorees is a step above in terms of price, and that's because it's a step above in terms of complexity in the overall. And 2018 is quite a nice vintage, and it's good to test them side to side because you can reevaluate that that feeling that the Bellevue could be lighter. I think it's just a little bit more on the acidity, while the Pierres Dorees is a little bit riper, more ripe on the 18 vintage. But it's interesting to test them because you know that it's the same grape variety, but you have two distinct interpretation of the Pinot Noir in a family domain of Maison Louis Latour. And that's what makes those testing side to side interesting, because it's the same house crafting the wine, but the wine, it's not the same soul in the wine. And that's important for us at Maison Latour to show, because it's a reflection that sometimes we have. We take care of every single of our wine, and there is not a guide style that is applied to all the wine whatsoever. And those two wines, which are, it's not entry-level wines overall in the absolute, but it's the start of our price list at Maison Louis Latour. And even at this level of our price list, we take great care of the personality of the wine. And that's two wines with great personalities. So I'm happy that you are testing them side to side, because that's the whole point.
I think some of the comments that have come through are saying that perhaps the Bellevue is more tannic, more structured, and slightly more savoury, and that the Pierres Dorees is perhaps a little bit more generous and sort of slightly sweeter fruit. But I think it's really interesting that the two wines, whilst very, very definitely Pinot Noir, are very reflective of their sites, and are very different from something that you would find from the Côte d'Or.
Yeah, that the goal with that, and I quite agree with you when you say that the tannins level, so extraction level of the Bellevue would be higher than the Pierres Dorees, but the ripening would be better in the Pierres Dorees.
Yeah.
Oddly, because you know we are down south with the Bellevue, but as I said, with the altitude,
it can get very chilly at night down there. So Florian, an extremely difficult question for you. I know it's like choosing between your children. Which one are you taking home to have for your dinner tonight?
I think, you know what, I will take the Bellevue, because I'm taking, I wouldn't say a lot, but I'm drinking quite a bit of Pierres Dorees. I'm a big fan of this wine because you can match it with anything. I mean, you plan to grill some salmon in the barbecue, you can have it with it. You can have like a poultry salad, you can have some lasagna. It's very versatile. For the appetizer, I will go for the Bellevue. So let me tell you, Bellevue for the tonight aperitif.
I think that's been really super interesting. Actually, we haven't really talked with the Bellevue about barrels or wine, sort of winemaking details. Again, I sent out a tech sheet which hopefully does reflect what actually happened. So do you want to just touch quickly on any oak aging on that to provide some details?
You mean on the Bellevue?
Yeah.
No, it's not planned because as I said, we've made some tests and it was not at the level. I mean, it doesn't worth it. It's very expensive, as you know, to travel barrels and to use them and so on. So at some point when you do that, if it's just for the wine specs, it have to, translate into quality in the wine. And for the test and learn that we have done, it was not worth the effort of like aging in oak. I have a fun story about that. When they first started the project in '89, I was 2, so I weren't there. But I had the chance to have a bottle of 1989 from the Domaine de Valmoisine. And at the time, they had like maybe 3 barrels or 4 barrels of wine, And you believe me or not, really, you believe me or not, I put that wine in the middle of leftovers of a Paulet that was made in Meursault with only out of the roof wine. But I mean, unbelievable wine you cannot get. And I put that in the middle of it with, friends, and we were tasting blind. And I wouldn't say that people said, oh, that's the best wine, but no one noticed we had an intruder, So it was just amazing in the quality level and the aging potential of the wine. So I'm quite sure that someday we will be able to craft something amazing out of the Provence when it's come to Pinot Noir that is able to age in oak. But for this cuvée, it's not the point. We will carry on that way, and the only the next year project would be to say, okay, should we or should we not adapt a little bit the style of our Domaine de Valmoisine Pinot Noir cuvée in order to be closer to this type of extraction. So it might change a little bit the way we are handling our old style in the south, but there is no plan as of today to age this wine in oak.
Okay, thank you, Florian. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pick on somebody now. I'm going to pick on Callum if he's still around, because I think he's online. Callum, we're going to open up your microphone because I think you've got this wine on the list at Treadwell's as by the glass, the Pierres Dorees, I mean. So I wondered if you would say a word or two about how that wine does at Treadwell's. In the meantime, John asked retail prices. So the Pierres Dorees is around about 18 to 20 pounds, and the Bellevue is somewhere between 20 and 23 pounds, as I've found it. So Callum, is your microphone open? Or has he run? Is Callum there? No, I think Rebecca's plan to pick on Callum has gone. We frightened him off. So on that note, does anyone have any questions they would like to ask? Time is getting on now, and Florian has filled us in, I think, very well on the projects in both areas. So if anybody would like to ask any questions, then please say so now or forever hold thy peace. And it really remains for me to say thank you, Florian. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've actually had the wine in front of me for once. That was great. The audience is split on which is their favourite. There seems to be some breakfast drinking going on, which sounds like
that's a good thing that we have some.
Now Liz Sagues, who actually did visit Valmaison, which is fairly rare, last year, said, is there progress on a Valmaison visitor centre so that we can all go and have a look?
Oh, but you know, when I mentioned those AV investment, I was thinking of that. You know, it's we bought a very old cup at the time, and so we had to redo the whole thing. And so there is still part of it. No worries, there is no impact on the quality of the wine, but there is still part of it that we don't want to show to people because it's kind of old and, you know, rusty. So yeah, we improve every year. Impossible to do it, you know, in one day. It's a long run investment, but yes, there is every year improvement, so you can come back every year.
Let's keep going back every year. That's fabulous. Thank you, Florian. It's been
You're welcome.
Lovely spending time with you this afternoon. And thanks everybody else for joining in. Enjoy the wines this evening. It's going to be a beautiful evening here in the UK. And I think it's perfect. One of these two wines, perhaps on some ice or out of the fridge, with, what did you say? Some salmon. I think that sounds fantastic. I think that's what I'm
Yeah,
going to
well,
do.
the last time I had grilled salmon with grilled zucchinis. Just, you know, grill the stuff and have it with the Pierres Dorees. It speaks for itself.
That sounds great. That sounds great. Thanks a lot, Florian. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you very much. Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.